Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are now tuned into the Orwig Hour, and today we're discussing Mr. Chris Orwig's go-to camera for commercial work.
Yeah, and
So
singing bowls.
let's start it out
No.
the right way. Singing bowls. We're going to be recommending singing bowls today.
We are. We are.
Chris,
Yes.
welcome, man.
Yeah, so good to chat. I'm so excited about this topic because I think it's relevant for everyone. And you and I have talked about this before, but there are the way we think about cameras, like features and marketing and all of that. And then there's also trying to find the right fit for who we are. So that's a lot of what today is about.
Totally. And I do want you to notice, I don't know if you noticed, but I had to go, like,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
match you today.
Got the matching mic.
We had to
Yeah.
match energies today. But you know, I read that title, and it's like the go-to camera for commercial work. So I'm gonna start it right there for you and just kind of throw this out.
Yeah.
What are we talking about with commercial work? The
Yeah.
expanses are so vast nowadays.
Yeah, and it's a great point and topic and important for our conversation today because it's not what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 years ago. I mean, it's evolving, right? And basically it's when we get paid to do something. And there can be so many different ways to get paid to create work. And I think one of the things it means for me now is, and we'll talk about this camera in particular, Sony A7R5, but I'll most jobs now I'm doing stills or stills and video or stills and video and my iPhone or stills and video my iPhone and a drone. And it's very broad, like you said. And what I want to do in our today's conversation is really kind of expand this so that we're not thinking like, oh, upper echelon, really high paying, big deal commercial jobs, but kind of the whole gamut. And who are we as photographers? Because this isn't about me, this is about us together and our conversation and finding the right fit. So when I work with a student, when I'm mentoring someone, when I'm teaching a workshop and someone says, is this the right camera for me? I can't say yes or no until I know more about what they shoot, how they shoot, what their interests are, what their budgets are. And so that's a really important part of the conversation.
And I love your approach to this because I think there is this kind of, if you say commercial photographer, it's big city only, it's editorial, it's big budget. And I love that you make that distinction to kick this whole thing off because a lot of our viewers are, by definition, commercial photographers. And it's people who are headshot photographers. We have pet photographers. We have people
Yes.
who are photographing families and children and events. And all this stuff is commercial photography. So I think it takes off that kind of elitist,
Yeah.
chrome filter that we have on, well, commercial work is only up here. And I kind of love that, we set that out and we distinguish that to start this thing off.
Yeah, yeah, and let's bring it down to earth too. That there, I have lots of great friends and good photographers, amazing photographers who have a job and then they do some side hustle work. They're commercial photographers as well, right? And maybe they only do a few things a year, but they're still getting paid to do that. So that means it's commercial. That means they have to figure out, well, what gear do I use? And with gear and all this stuff, I love analogies and metaphors and whatnot. But I have one friend who has a Ferrari, which is just a weird thing to have a friend with a Ferrari, but there it is. And I was like, hey, we should go hiking. He was like, yeah. And then right before we were about to go, he's like, oh, can you drive? And I was like, well yeah, of course. How come you don't want to drive? He's like, well, I can't park the Ferrari at the trailhead. You can only park a Ferrari in certain places, right? Because it will definitely get broken into at I live in Santa Barbara, beautiful trails, and it's a safe town, but still, that's the wrong car, so to speak, for someone that, let's say, loves backpacking, loves hiking, loves going to beach with their golden retriever dog, like I do. That's that, even though that's an amazing car, it's the wrong car. And I think cameras can be like that as well. There can be a camera, and I'll talk about why this is a fit for me. That's amazing. I mean, this is one of the best cameras in the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you. And what we have to do when we're thinking about our gear is try to find that fit and that match. And that's really what today is about. And it's not about ego because there's something that's like kind of wonderful about like, ooh, I got this, really big, beautiful thing. Let's go back to my friend with the Ferrari. That Ferrari is probably about his ego. Not probably, it really is. But that ego gets in the way of him enjoying certain things in life. Now it opens opportunities for other things. But I'm just trying to let's just look at it, in a little more openly and have some fun with this. Also, I'm not equating this to a Ferrari. Uh,
Look at it. I mean, shoes, right? You have
shoes.
kids,
Okay.
right? We
Yeah.
both have we both have our parents.
Yeah.
When you go out and your kids are like, "Hey, we want to go down to the beach. It's raining out. We want to go down to the beach and play in the sand, play in the mud, whatever. We're
Yeah.
gonna get in the water." Are you gonna bring your brand new pair of white sneakers that is gonna be like your, "Hey, these are
Right.
date night with the wife, walking along Main Street, window shopping"? No, you're not going to. You're gonna wear the shoes that are like, "All right, these things have been through everything. They're beat up. They're already dirty. I'm not gonna," because I mean, at least this is the way I function. I want to be able to go out there and I don't want to go play football in the yard with my son and being like, "Oh, hold on, I can't run. I don't want to get grass stains."
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
tool
Yeah.
for the
Which,
job.
yeah, which brings up an important point that one of my mentors said, I got one of my first cameras, I remember, and I was like nervous because I was like, this thing cost me so much. It was not this camera, but another. And he was like, you know what, Chris, I hope I see some pretty good scratches on that thing really soon. And he just was trying to shift my framework that you got to use it. You're not going to keep this in a little glass case. Like cameras are meant to be used and used in a way that aligns with who you are. On the other hand, maybe you're a studio photographer and your camera is kind of always indoors and is always in a case. Well, that you're going to choose a different camera perhaps than someone who's outdoor adventure photographer or who knows what. So with all that being said, how about if I jump to slides? We're going to
Let's
talk
do
more
it.
about this, but
Yeah, let's
I
do it.
want this for everyone listening to be relevant to you and really think about this isn't the Chris Orwig show. Of course, I'm going to talk about my own stuff because that's all I have. But I want you then ask yourself, okay, that's him. What about me? And that's a big important part of this conversation. And let me do this. I'm just going to, as I mentioned, Derek, I'm going to turn off my audio because I have a couple slides with audio that we don't need to hear. But my ultimate or my dream camera for commercial work is the Sony A7R5. And one of the things that this talk is really about is kind of finding this camera that is dreamy, that just really ignites us. And for me, there are some qualities for dream cameras. One of them is they deliver the highest possible results. So we could talk technically about things like dynamic range and focus and all the nitty gritty, but I just want something that really, really allows me to deliver top quality. I want something with a strong build, so it needs to be, a really solid camera, but yet at the same time delightful to use. And it's kind of funny to put strength and delight in the same area, but it's true. You want to just be like, wow, this is like so fun. But also it's so reliable. And I think those two are really important. For me, it needs to inspire, needs to enliven, needs to fuel the fire, it needs to empower, it needs to kind of cause me to step up my game and to really, really get excited about what I'm doing. So what this a lot of is about is trying to find this match for you and trying to figure out what is the best match for who you are. So for me, I'm going to show some images of just me out and about. This one on the left, I'm on a sailboat, and then I'll play the one on the right. I think my daughter made this little iPhone video. This is in Yosemite. And so sometimes I'm out on a boat, sometimes I'm up in the mountains, sometimes I am doing stuff related to, in this case, SpaceX, and I'm at SpaceX. I can't show any of the interior photos because those are all I don't have the rights to use them because security reasons and stuff like that. But sometimes, and this is just an iPhone photo out on the right, out in front of SpaceX with one of the people I was working with, and I was photographing and filming a bunch of astronauts. But in those situations, the gear kit that I'm using is what you're seeing on the left. So I have two A7R5s. I'll talk about why two. That will be very important later. An A7 set of lenses. I've just given a few webinars on lenses, and then a gimbal, my camera straps, batteries, cards, microphones, but pretty lean and mean. So this is kind of what it means for me to be a commercial photographer. Sometimes that means I'm on a very high-end retreat, which this was for. And you can see in the image on the right, for a little bit of it, I was filming interviews. So I need a camera that can do stills and video really, really well. And sometimes I'm just doing stills. Sometimes I am out on sand dunes, and out there on the sand dunes in this little video, I think it was my assistant was just helping. I'm just talking about kind of, I have this thing to diffuse the light, and then I'm gonna kneel down to a camera bag and show what I have as far as cameras and lenses and gear and stuff like that. So, oh, and tripod, but you get the idea. So sometimes it's sand dunes, sometimes it is chocolate, and we'll have a moment of chocolate, which will be fun. And these are iPhone, but I also would film this with a camera I have set up for video. But look at that hot fudge. How cool is that? I was like, oh my gosh. He even asked me, he's like, do you want to try stirring it? I was like, yes, I do. And the smell of that was amazing. So sometimes, because I work for Ghirardelli Chocolate, look at all those. Look at all of that chocolate on conveyor belts. I've done a lot of work in their different areas, and getting to see how stuff is made, and usually it's really clean. Sometimes it's messy and dripping and kind of delightful. And just this is my last chocolate moment for you, but this is called the chocolate chip waterfall. Just thousands and thousands of chocolate chips going over that. So I need commercial gear that allows me to do that. And for this particular brand, we'll see on the right, I'm using studio lights, a B10 interior. We have maybe 30 or 40 people on set. In this case, I'm photographing Miss California, and it's kind of a lifestyle moment of enjoying ice cream sundaes on location at a new spot. This is in Germany at ESA, which is Germany's version of NASA. And then you can see the kit that I have, again, two A7R5s and an A1. And I'm, again, doing stills and video. Oh, this is kind of funny. I'm down in Costa Rica, and to get access to these different places, I had to ride these ATVs. This was one of my favorite jobs of my life, but I have the A7R5 on my shoulder, so I need a camera that can really handle the build, or not the build, handle whatever I'm needing to do or wherever I'm going. And then other times, this again is down that way. It's photographing some lifestyle stuff on the right. It's mostly stills, but also some video. And then on the left, doing some aerial work from a helicopter. And with that, I'm kind of needing this camera that can kind of go everywhere with me and do these different types of jobs that I never really know what they're going to be. So my gear that I use is a kind of a wide range. I'm going to turn my volume back up, and Derek, I'm going to pause here for a second to see if you have any questions or thoughts, because I had my audio off. I couldn't hear you. But am I still good to go? And you guys hearing me okay?
Yeah, yeah, still
Was
good
that
to
kind of
go.
fun? Was it fun to see those little snapshots?
It's great to see because I think it opens up our eyes to see what your idea, what commercial work is for you, which I think helps here.
Yes. Yes. And we'll circle back to that for sure. And that's why I wanted to show that. And often when we see gear, and I'll keep going with my slides, Derek, too. I'll give you a shout here in a second. With gear, we see it like this, and it's kind of like shiny and pristine, and and it's just like this perfection. But when we're doing commercial work, we're paid to do something. Remember, I said it needs to be reliable and strong. It also needs to be delightful. And often we need a set of tools, and we need something that really is go-to. So for me, the R5 is this dream camera for work that I'm getting paid to create. Now, it's really important to talk about within the context of commercial work that it's still personal. So even though I'm getting paid, I still like my heart and soul is really into it. And there are moments when I'm on a job, I take photographs or capture video content that's just for myself. And so for me, that sometimes means, I capture an image that we didn't necessarily need this one of this astronaut, but I wanted it for myself. Or perhaps there's a moment on a commercial shoot that I really like, and so I capture it. Again, I love this photo. I don't really care if the client likes it or not. And so I just want to integrate that in, that it doesn't mean we're letting go of our own passions, desires, and interests. And what I'm basically walking through are different commercial jobs in different parts of the world and different occasions, sometimes indoors, like at an event for the band, for that chocolate company I talked about, which I love. Last time I came home from a job with them, I had like 20 pounds of chocolate for my kids, which was so much fun. Sometimes out in nature, sometimes in a studio, sometimes in kind of a remote location, in a downtown kind of urban location. Sometimes it involves brands and friends. I always love that kind of work. Sometimes it involves family members, or families, I should say. I'm not related to this family. And band photography, celebrity photography for brands, in this case, a wedding. And I consider weddings commercial because you're paid to be there. One on the left it was a really well-paying job for a wallpaper company, which her art has been turned into wallpaper. The one on the right is for a jewelry company. Now, out of these two images, I won't give exact numbers, but I would say like the image on the right, the amount that I made from that, let's call it 1, and the image on the left, the amount I made from it was 10. And basically it was 10 times more than the other one. Maybe that's a better way to say it. But the point is, it's still all commercial. And I'm still investing my heart, my soul, my mind, my skills. And ultimately, I'm then thinking what camera is going to be the best fit. And that's the question I want you to keep asking yourself. Not what camera does someone else think I need, but what do I really need for the type of stuff that I do. And here I'm barefoot on a beach, right? So the camera goes on the beach. Here I'm in a field of flowers. Here I'm in an abandoned bank in New York. Here I'm at a corporate headquarter job, kind of capturing employees and what it's like to work there. Okay, let's pause on this picture. This guy's one of the IT guys at the company, but how classic is this as an IT photo? I love it. I just love all this stuff. I could just travel around this image and there's just so much there. And then you go from that to something maybe more glamorous, and this one's in Costa Rica, or to something a little more. I don't know what this is, but it just feels nostalgic almost, even though it's captured recently. And really, you're kind of seeing this range of type of imagery that I get to do in different capacities. And I think I'm getting close to the end of this, and then Derek and I will chat some more. But you're getting a feel for the many places I need to bring my camera and the type of even deliverables that I need. And here, showing mostly stills, or I think I'm showing all stills. I didn't actually think about video. I could have shared that, but I didn't. I was so still focused. But I do create short films for many of the brands, this band I did for, or brands that I work for as well. All right. So as we kind of get to the end of this and hopefully kind of enjoy the imagery, we get to this question of what is a commercial photographer? And that's the last slide I have. So I'm going to stop sharing there and invite Derek to come back up. And, maybe we'll just start with, answering it ourselves, and then we'll broaden it. But for you, Derek, what is it? What is a commercial photographer? Help me understand this strange, outdated 1980s term.
I think you said it perfectly to start this off. off. It's a for hire paid photographer. I think you can say when you use like the Venn diagram, you'll
Yeah,
have like take a wedding photographer, for example. They might refer to themselves as a wedding photographer. They
right.
can still be a commercial photographer as well. You're still doing paid work. You still have a client that you're providing paid work for. So in my definition of anything that you're doing paid work for is a commercial photographer. It's something that, and I think the reason, or of why are we referring to it as a commercial photographer? Why are we talking about a camera for
Right.
commercial photographers? I think it's that distinction that when we're talking to it in terms of gear specifically, as we are here, it's the distinction between paid work and unpaid work because there's clearly different things that matter when it's paid work. When I go out taking photos on the street for fun, if I forget a battery, if my camera craps out and dies on me, there's no loss. There's nothing at stake there. I think that, not to say that this matters for the definition of commercial, but it matters why we're talking about what is the gear. And I think that's the heart of the conversation is
Yeah.
let's ask you. I'm going to flip it back.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer a question by
Yeah.
completely avoiding your
No, no,
question.
no.
No, I mean, simple definition on my end, but I want to flip it back on you.
Yeah.
What matters to you in terms of what do you need in a camera that you're doing for paid work? What are the things, what are the must-haves? What are the hot button items
Yeah.
that if it's paid work, you have to have it?
Yeah, and I love how you answer that too. I'll answer that, but also just rewind a little bit. I love how you answered that. And I also want to say that we can use this term in different contexts. Like if I meet someone, I don't they say, "Hey, what do you do?" I don't say I'm a commercial photographer because that's like, a little bit throws them off. I just say I'm a photographer and they say, "What kind?" I say, "Well, I do a lot of work with people in it." And they're like, "Oh, great." And that's fine. If I'm talking to a client, I'm really emphasizing commercial. I might say, they say like, well, what do you do on, what do you do in other situations? And I say, well, on my last like commercial job for this brand, so I dropped in the word commercial there, right? So there's times where we use it publicly. There's times right now we're using it internally. Internally, I tend to think of it as like, yeah, we're getting paid. It doesn't matter how much, we're just getting paid. So it's like if we're doing something that matters because of that energy that's there. And so for me, back now to answer your question, one of the things that's essential is I always have two cameras. And I like to have my cameras identical. So it's the same way I buy hard drives. It's kind of weird, but I never buy one hard drive. I always buy two. And I have stuff in duplicate. And this came from me from one of my mentors. I was doing an early commercial job and I was packing up and getting ready to go. And one of my kind of mentors and friends, he was like, "Oh, you must not be taking this job very seriously." And I was like, what are you talking about?" This guy named Harry. I'm like, "Harry, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, you only have one camera." And I was like, "Oh, you're right." And it's not so much that the camera's going to fail, it's that I could drop it in the ocean and it's done. They could have flown me down to Costa Rica and I'm on this huge 4 day thing. And day one, I fry my camera. That's my own fault. If I do not have a backup, I'm really, really in a tight spot. I would say the same thing is true even if I'm doing a small shoot for a jewelry company. They get the model and they have all the budget and all the time and everything's all set up. And I get there and I have some issue and I don't have a backup, I have a problem. So one of the things I encourage people to think about is because people are always like, how do I get paid to do photography? How do I step it up? How do I elevate my game? Also, of course, how do I find the right camera? One of the things is having more than one camera. And that's obviously total subjective opinion. But for me, that gives me a lot of confidence. It gives me a lot of comfort and it really helps me be nimble because the modern photographer, at least the way I see it, is a very nimble person. He or she does things that are true to them, true to their own voice, their own style, but they're able to deliver a range of assets of content. So, for example, let's say I really love wide angle environmental portraits. I could deliver those, but then the client's like, can you also get an up close one? And for me, if I have two cameras, often my two lenses, which we've talked about, 24 to 70 and then 85, I could just grab the 85 and do that. Then I could grab the 24 to 70 and do that. So there's that really nimble flexibility there. So this is not answering your question in entirety, but it's a start to the answer.
Yeah. I mean, because all that stuff plays in. I mean, I know I'm in a lot of photography forums, and a lot of times it's just entertaining to see what people are saying. They argue back and forth, and everybody knows everything. But, it often comes up where you get beginners or newer photographers in there and they ask a question
Yeah,
about, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the job I have. What is the best camera? What is the best flash? What is the best lens?
right.
This and this and this and that. And that's where you start seeing the features come out and the features play a role. For you, how much are features like auto-focusing? Because there clearly are. You said this, I think, last time we had you on. Every camera is good now. Every
Yeah,
manufacturer is putting out cameras that would completely blow away cameras from 10, 15 years ago.
right.
That's where we are technologically. But for you, I'm hiring you to do a job.
Yeah,
This is it's a big budget, once in a lifetime job. If you screw it up, you can't do it again. What are the features you have to have? What are you looking at in a camera? And more specifically, I do want to tie in that A7R5 because, again, we talked about this last week, the comfortability with your setup.
yeah,
What makes you feel so comfortable about that camera? What is it? Is it the fact that the autofocus is super accurate? You feel like you're not going to miss shots. Is it the ergonomics where you have function buttons and you're able to customize it to your liking? What is it about it for you? And more importantly, what are the characteristics that you look for in a
yeah.
must have?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question. And then also I'll loop that back to as people are listening to my answer, also think about what your own answer is, because my answer only matters to me, and we all need to come up with our own answers. So stepping backwards before I get to the features, I was for a while a sponsored cyclist, and I remember getting this brand new road bike. It was amazing from this brand, and here I was sponsored to ride this bike. And this was the best bike I ever had in my life. And when I got the bike, my fitness level was not at the level it needed to be, but the bike was so good that I just worked so hard, I upped my game. Now, had they given me a really low end bike, I bet my fitness level would have stayed low. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
first and foremost, I need gear that calls me to rise to the occasion. And part of that is like if I grab like and this camera to me is I think it's the best camera in the world right now. So if I'm using the best camera in the world, I'm not just picking it up like, yeah, I'll just kind of see what happens. I'm like, game on, Chris, because I'm required to step up. So that's really important to me. And I realize that's going to mean different things to different people and different times in my career. The step up may have been a half step, not a full or triple or double step, right? But I want something that's really going to inspire me. Next, when it comes to features, I want the camera to dissolve. And what that means for me is, I know this will sound obnoxious, I never miss focus. I never have any errors due to exposure. I never have any errors due to not being able to find menus or buttons. The camera just delivers everything. If ever I get a bad photograph, it's on my craft and me, it's not on the camera. So I want something that is so, I guess, just incredibly reliable. So, and then feature wise, dynamic range. Dynamic range is huge.
Yeah.
And basically that means you get a lot in the highlights, a lot in the shadows, lots of everything in between. When you go to a camera with a higher dynamic range and you open up the image, the first time you look at it, it's actually disappointing because it feels a little bit like almost like there's just everything in there. I'm going to compare that to a JPEG, which is like less dynamic range. It feels snappy, it feels poppy, and you look at it, but you can't do a lot with that. When you have a huge dynamic range, you can really recover highlights or really push shadows, really process it in some powerful, strong ways. So for me, a camera that's capable of doing that is so essential because if you look at the photos, if we kind of reverse engineer, there's a lot where I do not have studio lights and I'm just out there, on an ATV in the middle of the jungle in Costa Rica and I have to create something good and the jungle light is dappled or shadowy or who knows what. So I need to be able to, I just know that I can recover a certain amount of shadow detail. I know that it can handle this type of exposure, high or low. So that is A plus critical. Focusing, I personally do not think we should have to think about focus unless we want to. So with this kind of camera system for me, I am actively exploring how to focus. Like I often will shoot, like eye autofocus obviously tracks eyes and faces and all of that kind of stuff, and it's mind-blowingly amazing. But there's times where I'll move my little thing around and I maybe want something a little different. So, so I never am thinking, or I'm never like, oh, I really hope that my focus is, I nail my focus. I just know my focus is nailed and end of story. And so that's really, really critical. And then remember I said like the delightful to feel and in hand, they, with, with any camera, and again, I want to make this open to everyone, but if you take something and then refine it, refine it, and refine it, it's gotten to a level of refinement where the ergonomics, the buttons, the menu, oh my gosh, the menu system to access stuff, it's all there. So the whole point of it, all of those things, is that it dissolves. The trick is when you watch a YouTube review of a camera, which I watch and I love all those, they're really emphasizing how awesome all this stuff is, which you actually need. But then by the time you're doing photography or capturing video, you actually don't want to have to think about any of that stuff. So it's almost like we want that YouTube video pre-purchase, and then you start using it and you forget it all because the camera just does all the things it promises to do. So jumping back, dynamic range is really big for me. Focus is really big for me. The build and feel is really big. I want to feel connected to a camera. Same thing with an instrument. If I guess I don't have any instruments handy right now, but if I have an instrument, I want it to just feel really good in my hands. And then menus, I'm saying the on-screen menu, the dials, how accessible is all of this stuff. And in the older versions of cameras, it used to be you kind of like, okay, I'm having some problem, and then I just would search and it would take forever, or you push the wrong button. They've gotten that to a point where it's figured out. And so that, to me, why that matters is that frees me up to be in the moment. So I want a camera, and I think everyone kind of wants a camera that's good enough that we can really go at it. I'm going to go back to professional cycling. When I was doing that, I would bike up in the mountains in Santa Barbara where I live, and there's, it's 4,000 foot mountain. So it's sea level to 4,000. And I would drop down that mountain every day, and I would be going so fast down that mountain on these curvy roads. I just wanted a bike that I knew was so reliable. I was never thinking about equipment failure. It was all up to me, and it was my technique as I was riding and as I was cornering. And one time when I did go down, I made a mistake, and it was not the bike's fault. And so I think in photography, same kind of thing. If there is to be a mistake, I want it to be mine. And I know I'm going a lot on this, but then I would even say, which I didn't talk about, is like storage and capacity and multiple card slots. That's really huge for me, so that I can do a 4-day shoot or a full day shoot and just keep shooting. I'm never thinking like, oh, I only have one card slot and one kind of card. I want really high capacity, really high write and speeds and all that kind of stuff. That was a lot, but I got excited about it.
You were. I was like, I wasn't going to step in. You were speaking it
Yeah, I
so
was like,
impassioned. But
jamming. I'm like,
you,
yeah,
you brought up some great points about
yeah,
comfortability,
yeah,
just really wanting to be comfortable. It's kind of like everyone that drives knows this feeling.
yeah,
There's no better feeling than when you take your car for a checkup and they
yeah,
do like the 72-point inspection, and you drive out of there. And I was just talking about this with my sister. It's like you feel like your car drives better. And
yeah,
it's 90% psychological. You feel like it drives better because you just took it to the shop and the mechanic, and they just told you everything's fine, and we topped
yeah,
your fluids off and put the right air pressure in your tires. And it's like, but psychologically you feel better, you feel like the car drives better. And I think the same goes for cameras. When you have a reliable camera and the autofocus, I mean, that's a huge thing.
it's
That's a
huge.
huge
Yeah,
thing, especially as we get more reliant upon technology. you come to rely on it. You really rely on your autofocus. And if your autofocus is off, I mean, I remember early DSLR days
Yeah,
when
yeah, it's
you
horrible.
would buy a lens and you had to calibrate the lens, and it was very possible that you would take a lens out of the box. Doesn't matter what, if it was a high quality or low quality lens, it might back focus, it might front focus a little. You had to make sure that it was calibrated to the body. I think mirrorless cameras, I don't think I've ever seen it in a mirrorless. I mean, everything now in the, these
Yeah,
digital cameras has come so far, but that's something that it was a comfortability thing where it was really
yeah,
just, I don't feel comfortable that I'm going to nail the focus. I don't want to go, and if I'm
yeah,
not shooting tethered, I don't want to think I'm great. I took an image the other day and I thought it was in focus, and I got it up on the big monitor
yeah.
and I'm like, oh, totally didn't see that the
So
focus was in the
disappointing.
background, and
Yeah,
I didn't catch it in the, and it wasn't a
yeah,
big
yeah,
deal.
yeah,
I laughed at it because I'm like, man, how do I educate people? But
yeah,
it
yeah,
happens. And I think that's
yeah.
something that when you look at gear for commercial use, you want to minimize that. You really want to have something that you feel comfortable with. And I think having the technological aspects, like you talked about, is what really makes you comfortable. Nothing else makes you comfortable like that. You want to be in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. And to that point, I think part of this, and hopefully people are listening, like kind of figuring out, okay, where are you at with your camera and what's maybe a step up. I have one person who I was mentoring and also came to one of my workshops, and she had an older camera. It was amazing. And I was kind of demonstrating something. I said, well, let me just use your camera for a second. And and it made me, it was not mirrorless. It did not have very good autofocus, and suddenly I had to like fully switch gears and ways of thinking, and it just made me realize, okay, so here I am trying to teach how to do something, but even in teaching, for me, my success rate with that camera, because I used to use that particular camera, it was maybe like 2 or 3 out of 10 shots would I would like nail it because I like really shallow. And and so she was wrestling with learning some of the like compositional fundamentals and light, and on top of that, focus, and it just made the learning process so much slower. Whereas I think when you have these features and the basically I'm being an advocate for upgrading. Um, that when you have these features, you get better faster. And this isn't true in all areas of life. Like let's say you upgrade to a new car. It doesn't really change your commute, or you upgrade to a new pair of hiking shoes. It doesn't really change how fast or slow you hike. I mean, it's nice, but I think cameras, we're at this juncture where, like we said in the beginning, everything's really great right now. It's like really, really amazing stuff that's coming out. Technology is moving so fast. But when we upgrade at this point, what we're getting is, yes, new features, but they're not just like in a car, like a new cup holder or a new kind of interior seat or something. We're getting stuff that empowers us, and it empowers us to be creative in previously unimaginable ways, whether that's because of dynamic range and suddenly we can capture things in different light scenarios, or it's internal. I didn't even talk about this, but the internal sensor stabilization that's built in. So I can now shoot in much lower light situations. I'm ensured a more stable image. So it's, when you have something that really empowers you creatively, what it does is it gets you excited. That excitement translates into the work. The work gets better. It gets you more excited. And then in a commercial setting, there's a deliverable, right? This isn't just for me, this is for them. The client, big or small, gets excited. And then it generates momentum to be able to do more. Because people are always looking for, how do I make a living doing this? It's great to do. Photography is so fun. How do I get more jobs? And that's where I think gear and finding a camera that's a match is really helpful in that way. Now that being said, I think we also really need to think about budget, because I talk with people
Yeah,
about this
yeah.
a lot. Yeah. And sometimes people will hear, let's say in my case, you kind of saw the kind of work that I do. This camera is very justified. Like it pays for itself many, many times over. If I had maybe a day job and I was just doing 3 or 4 small little things on the side, and it would take me 10 years to make enough to pay for the camera, it wouldn't justify that. So then I would find a level camera that was within my budget. And I think this is true in like any area of life, really. I forget what we were talking about, Derek. Earlier we were chatting and I was trying to compare it to something else, but I'm just going to go with guitars. I love instruments. But let's say you want to be, a really good musician. And so part of it is like buying a guitar that inspires you. You love the sound, you love the feel, is aspirational, but you don't want to spend so much on a guitar that you can't afford your rent or your car or your groceries. Even though it's this amazing guitar, so there's this funny balance of, yes, you want it to be a reach, but you want it to be a reach within range. At least that's what I found in working with people. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've come from the bottom up where my first couple real cameras were buying very low end models. I couldn't afford anything
Yeah.
and using it, getting the most out of it, and then just slowly, incrementally working my way up. So I've always been an advocate for, you know, the gear doesn't matter, but it does matter. And there's everything,
A little, yeah. Keep on.
there's a giant gray area. Like
Yeah.
everything else in life, there's a huge gray area. And it's like, okay, the gear doesn't matter, but at a certain point, you can't go out and you can't photograph the moon with a 24 millimeter kit lens and expect
Right.
to get a nice shot of the moon, a nice detailed shot of the moon. It just That's not the way it works. At a certain point, and I've had this conversation with mentees of mine all the time where it's like, okay, I love this. This is what I want to photograph, but here are my pitfalls. Here are the roadblocks. And that's where it gets down to, okay, well, let's prioritize. Do you really, one of the things that comes up a lot of times is with wildlife photography, right?
Okay.
Wildlife photography, you kind of have to invest in a telephoto. You that's the nature of the beast. You have to have reach to,
Yes. Yes.
if you want to photograph birds. You can
Yes.
go out and you can look at birds all day, but what do most bird watchers have? They have binoculars because you really need that to maximize the experience. So you have to decide, okay, well, can I afford a 600 millimeter that is super fast, high quality glass?
Right.
Or do I have to start with something that's more within my range? And this is where the commercial aspect comes in, where sometimes you have to make an investment in yourself and in your business. If you're going to charge people, you have to invest in something. Now, the person who's just starting out there learning, they're working on a light budget. That's not to discredit anything or to say that, well, you can't be a great photographer if you don't have expensive gear, if you don't have the top of the line gear. But at a certain point, it's investing in yourself, investing in your business, investing so that your client feels comfortable. We talk about how we want to feel comfortable.
Right.
We also
Right.
want our clients to feel comfortable that we are going to deliver.
Yeah. Can
And
I
yeah,
jump in
yeah,
there
jump
too?
in.
But as you said that, it made me realize like my clients often will be like, "Hey, what kind of camera do you have?" And I'll say something, and they're like, "Ooh, that," and they actually know what it is, and that's
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah, and it's, I think, because photography has become so common, right? That there's this, especially in creatives, art directors, creative directors, they'll kind of know. And I think, yeah, as you were talking, I was like, there's times where someone's like, "Oh, what do you?" Or they'll say something. They'll kind of try to be cool, like, "Oh, what are you shooting with?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like the A7R5," and they're like, "Oh, nice, yeah." And I think that, though, back to delivering to client, obviously there's the deliverable itself, the asset, the image, the video content, but then there's also like, oh, this guy's like, he's playing an A game. He's bringing an A game to the table, and that matters to certain clients. Certain clients, they don't even care. They don't even know. They're clueless about all of it. But I think there is a time for that, and part of that too is, in this particular art director that referring to, he really loves being able to crop in on images. I haven't talked about like this particular camera, 60 megapixels, basically about 9,500 across, 6,000. It's like this massive image, way more than you need. And so just knowing that like you can have like a photograph that almost serves as a plate and come in and extract pieces out of it or crop in or be a little more flexible with that. And that also builds confidence, is having that higher resolution. Of course, you don't just want more pixels, you want quality resolution. So it's like we now know, it used to be like the megapixel race. Now we're like, we have enough megapixels, but are they good? That's the dynamic range, and that's the sensor, the quality of the sensor, and the glass, and all those things. But um, yeah, I think being able to deliver that and doing so in a way where I'm kind of going back to like you're talking about the gear matters, it doesn't matter. Like it really matters to me, the gear that I'm using. Some of my clients it matters. Some of them they don't even care. They're just caught up in the emotion or the moment of the image. And so that's where again it doesn't matter. They don't need to know like, oh, you're using a camera that has good ergonomics or something, or good battery life or whatever.
They're
Um,
hiring you based on what you've provided them, whether it's a website, whether it's a portfolio, whether it's they've seen your work or been
yeah,
referred to you, where it's like, I'm hiring you, you know your craft.
yeah,
That's all I need to know. All I need to know is that I'm hiring you for what you produce. I like what you produce. It's up to you, whatever you use. I don't care if you use a paintbrush and a jar
right.
of mayonnaise to get there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I'm hearing you say too is like a little bit of dependability. And again, another maybe bad analogy, but it's like um, we shop at Trader Joe's. Let's say you forget your normal bags, have to use a paper bag, and you load up a paper bag. That thing could break, but if you have a canvas bag, it's not going to break. You could put as many groceries as you want in the thing, and it's just going to do what it does. And so I think in commercial settings, there is like magic of, like you said, they're hiring you because they like you. They have affinity for you, your work, your approach to life, all these things. But they also just like want to be like, oh yeah, we know Chris can handle a helicopter. Chris can handle ATV. Chris can do this. Chris can, put on the stuff and go in the factory. He can deal with factory workers. He can deal with the CEO. He can, they're just, it's like kind of bad analogy, but maybe not. It's like, he's like canvas bag. Like we can do this thing. And the content he's creating is going to be usable in many different forms. And that gets back to being a modern photographer, which means there's some vertical video I capture with my iPhone that then the team will take and use on, for social. There's also drone stuff I'll capture, which we'll bring into videos in really specific ways, or if we need to get a certain angle. There's stills with supplemental light, there's stills with natural light, there's video that's handheld, there's video with a gimbal, there's video that's locked off. And for me, it's all part of storytelling and exploring how can I tell a story and deliver and create something that is compelling, but it's also really usable. And what I mean by that is you don't ever want something like kicked back. For example, like you don't want a client to be like, oh, that was a great shot. Do you have like a higher res version? Or do you have one where it isn't so grainy? Or do you have one where like, could I crop into that and crop my aunt out of the picture? And so we just have this or whatever. You don't want to have to say like, no, I already, we
Yeah.
can't, we just want, it's almost like, yeah, of course. Like the answer is always yes. And to me, in the kind of work I want to do, it's very aspirational. So I'm this, and hopefully this doesn't sound obnoxious, but I'm always going to have what I would refer to as the best camera in the world. And the reason is I want to photograph the best people in the world, the best situations in the world. I want to get the best work I can do. I also want it to be deep and meaningful. And so I then am going to really, really go for it in that way. And again, it really depends upon what the goals are. And so rewinding just for a second, people often say, Chris, this is a good photo. And I just laugh and laugh inside because I think like that's like the worst question in the world. And I even don't like all blind critiques. I know we all do it and all this kind of stuff. But the reason is I need to know your intention. So if someone says, is this a good photo? There are, yes, certain photographic rules that make it a good photo. But I remember listening to the photographer that photographed this guy who was um, uh, uh, Ernest Hemingway wrote this one book, and it was based on this man he had met. And he went down to Cuba and he photographed this guy. So basically, photographing someone really important based on literature and life and all this stuff. And based on this own guy's cultural upbringing and stuff, it was a really important moment for him to photograph this guy. And he was capturing it with film, which was the main thing at the time. He said his first 15 frames were totally blurry because he was weeping. He was just so overwhelmed with emotion. But those blurry images were good
Mm.
because they were full of emotion. They were like, I mean, you couldn't see tear streaks, but you felt it. And so if someone just shows this a good picture, you might say, no, it's like blurry, right? But the story there makes it good. Or the intention. Do you want to hang it on a wall in a gallery? Do you want to hang it on a wall in a home, in your kid's room, in your living room? Do you want it to be a magazine cover? And we've talked about this before, but like I've had people review my work, and one that always stuck with me was the photo editor from Wired magazine, and she said, "Your photos are great, but I could never use them. They're like completely unusable, basically horrible to me." And she just said they don't have enough story. They're just like a person with a backdrop. It's like that. My magazine never photographed or never publishes that. So from that perspective, they weren't good. So if my
Mm.
intent was to do work for that publication, I would really need to figure out how to tell in more narrative with objects and scenes and setting, more like Dan Winters and all those kind of things, you know? So anyway, all that I'm saying is with this is really thinking through intention. What are we driving for? What are we striving for? That really shapes the quality of the stuff that we're creating. It also kind of affects the gear that we reach for, right? I'm going to go to a bike for a second. If you're just
Mm.
biking down to the beach and back and it's half mile, beach cruiser is great. You know, if you're going on a 100-mile ride, wrong choice. You know? And it really depends on your intention. Like, okay, my intention is to just do something around the block and casual, or to do street stuff. I have a small little compact camera. Um, or no, I want to be doing A-level work. I want something that challenges me. I want something that technologically is dependable, that has resolution so I can crop in, that has autofocusing, that has image stabilization, super long battery life, menus I can actually figure out. They're intuitive. And card capacity, multiple slots, so I can just keep shooting one card to the next, and all those things so that I can be creative. And I think ultimately being creative is connected to life. And for me, like if I had to, why is this my dream camera? It makes me come alive. I think it really does. I think I'm more alive when I'm using it. And you can't really put a price tag on that for me in my own situation. But for all of us, we have to kind of ask that question. Some other people might be like, well, I just kind of like flowers. And it's like, okay. Yeah, I kind of like them up close. Okay. I kind of want to just share them on Instagram. Okay. Then I might see, and I kind of don't like heavy cameras. I'd be like, oh, A7C and A7CR and macro lens. Boom, done. Or whatever, you know, whatever the match is.
I love that. That's kind of the perfect way to wrap this whole thing up, and is for all of our viewers out there, the people watching, the people listening, what is your end goal? What are you really, not even who is your client, really just what is your end goal? What are you looking
Yeah,
to get out of what final product? What makes you comfortable? What are the features that matter to you? What makes you feel like you said you want it to kind of just the camera to disappear. You want to be lost in the moment, which I think is important. What makes you, and everybody's list is different. You know, ask yourselves what makes the camera disappear for you? I think that's a great way to put it. And the more questions we ask ourselves, because like we said, everybody makes great cameras. Sony makes a ton of great cameras. They're all
right,
different for different users. And it's
right,
really about just finding which is the right one for you, which is, you know, we talked about lenses the last couple of weeks. Which lenses are the right lenses? It's not about good and bad. It's about what's right for the situation, what's right for the job, and what's right for you. I mean, everybody has their own personal preferences that for what they prefer. So what's right for you as a photographer?
Yeah, and then maybe last little thought to add on, and then is just being totally, utterly satisfied with it. Like just fall in love with whatever you have. So the way YouTube videos are, review videos are now, always there's like these are the 10 things I like and these are the four that are bad. And every video has to have that ratio, something similar to that. You can't just say everything's good about it because no one will watch the review.
Mhm.
So there are always these seeds planted in our mind, like, ooh, this one's good, but you know what? This little latch right here, I don't really like the sound of the latch, or something. Someone will tell you'll hear some review like that. Or you'll say like, ooh, I got the, A7R4. I wasn't able to afford the 5. Like, oh, poor old me. So what you have to do is just say, no, no way. I don't care about reviews. I don't care about whatever. This is the camera I'm able to have right now. I'm going to just go all in, fall in love with this thing, create amazing stuff with it, and just run and almost forget. That's where I think forgetting the reviews, you don't rewatch those things. You don't need to know some little latch or one button and the good reviewers will do that because it will make you feel like they're honest. They'll be like, well, this is, Sony's really put something great together. They'll be like, this is really great, but I really wish there was a dial in this empty space right here. And then what you're doing is like, yeah, why isn't there a dial right there? And which the A1 does have that dial, but which is almost irrelevant. And fall in love with photography. I mean, it's such a gift. It's so amazing, and all the gear is good enough. And like you said, I started the same way. You stair step your way into all this stuff. You don't just go for the top right away. Get something that fits you, but is a little bit of out of reach. So you have to step up your game, be totally satisfied with it. And the good news about gear, this is the best thing about gear, I think, is if you make the wrong decision, camera gear holds its value. You can
Yeah.
sell it and get something back from that and then change. And that is the beauty of how good all of this stuff is these days. And so while it is a risk, it's not an end of the world risk. And it sure is fun to play this risky game of figuring out how to capture better images and live a more interesting life, really.
Wisdom from the Zen master himself.
Ah, if only this latch, Derek. I
It- uh,
never even thought about this latch.
you gotta
That'd be
look.
my review. I want to do camera reviews one day, like where I just talk about like the soul of a camera. I don't want to talk about like, you know,
I'd be here for you. Send me the YouTube link. I'm watching
okay,
it.
okay, okay, yeah,
I'm
yeah. I
watching
just
it.
want to do it where I don't even talk about it, like how many axis image stabilization it is, or how many something something.
I want to hear
And
you talk your top 10 list of things that YouTube reviewers
I
don't talk about.
should.
I want to hear the SD card door latch noise. Why is that not an option in the menu? I can change the shutter sound. Why can't I
Yeah.
change the sound it makes when I open and close the SD
Yes,
card door?
yes, yes.
I
My
love
whole
it.
review, my whole review would just be like, it would be something like, be like, stop being so stupid and just be grateful you have a camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're come on, like seriously, people, we are complaining about some of the most luxurious things in the world. Let's just embrace it. Let's just love it. And obviously, I get critiques helpful and it moves things forward, but I think that critical mindset, if only I had the different camera, it can really stifle creativity. And I've seen it
Yeah.
happen to my students where they'll come to a workshop. My last workshop I had, there was this one kid, worst camera in the whole group. He took the best photos out of anyone. And afterwards, I was able to say that in front of the whole group, and the whole group affirmed it. And it really empowered him because he came in just thinking like, oh, I don't even know if I should be here. Everyone else has all this great stuff. I was like, no, get rid of that thinking. Like, use what you have and use it to its fullest. Um, that kid now wants to sell his car to buy a camera. I told him that's not a good decision, but
Tell them to buy a Ferrari. You can take it to the
yeah,
trail.
exactly, exactly.
Oh, Chris,
Oh, good
always
to
great
hang out.
having you on, man. And for those of
Yeah,
you who love Chris on the platform as well, there's going to be much more of him in the coming months. We'll get that all worked out. And if you guys ever do have any suggestions, you want to hear Chris go off on something, send
yeah,
in suggestions. We love that. But
yeah,
no, it's a great conversation. And look, for those of you watching the replay on YouTube, we want to hear what do you guys have to say about it? What do you guys see commercial photography as? What are the things that matter to you? It'll be interesting to see where cameras go in the future. We've talked about this so many times. What else can we do? There's things that they're adding to cameras that we never thought we'd probably see, and there's things that
Yeah.
we probably haven't even thought yet that are going to be coming in the future. So
Yes.
exciting
Yes.
times, but create with whatever you have. I think that's the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even let's I think we have to figure out new ways to talk about all this stuff too. I know people say I'm a content creator. That's a more contemporary term than say commercial photographer. That's kind of old school. But it does imply income. But we just need a new way of thinking about this crazy creative game we're playing, which is pretty magical and fun. And finding the gear that helps us to create these compelling stories, right? And kind of let go of some of our old ways of thinking and adopt some new ways. And one of the biggest ones that I just want to end with is that um, when you get paid to do something, it doesn't matter the amount of payment you're receiving doesn't define the quality of the work. And so just create the best work you can on whatever budget you have, and that will help you become better at the craft, and it will then generate, you know, more from it. I have too many students that are like, "Oh, if only we had this big budget, and if only I had an assist, if only I had a digital tech, if only, you know." I'm like, "Come on, you guys."
if you're not going to churn it out with what you have, because
Yeah,
I look, admittedly, I used to be the person that's like, oh, if I just had this job, if I got this opportunity, I have a great
yeah,
eye. Give me
yeah.
the opportunity. And then it's like,
Yes,
there have been
yes,
plenty of jobs I've gotten in the past where I'm like, holy crap, they gave me the opportunity. I didn't do it. That's why practice is
yes,
important. That's why really just putting in the hours, perfecting your craft, really
yeah,
working on, and I see this, I critique a lot of images and I tell the people all the time, I learn more from looking at other people's images than I do
yeah,
from looking at my own because, in a certain sense, we're desensitized to our own images. We see them so much.
yeah.
It's, our eye, we're not looking at everything like with the
Right,
detail that we
right.
look at somebody else's images. And
Very
I
true.
see things that I do that I don't like, that when I see it in someone else's images, I'd like it. And I'm like, wait, well, that helps me look at my images differently. So I
Yes.
think, really just working on your craft. The gear is always going to be there. You can always get the best out of, get the best out of what you have. You might not be able to do everything. You can't take the Ferrari
Yeah,
to the trailhead,
yeah,
but the Ferrari is still going to go 0 to 60 faster than the Corolla. The Ferrari is going to be fun on the track. You're
yep,
going to, you use a Ferrari in, you keep it in its lane. You
yeah,
keep it
yeah,
into its strengths and you get the most out of it the same way that I get my 2013 Honda Civic and it serves its purpose. They both get from point A to point B. They just do it differently.
yes. You know, and I know we're going on here, but another thought is like get insurance for your gear. I see a lot of young people who are working with stuff that's really expensive, and they're like riding a skateboard, hand holding something, and I'm just like, because the setback from that is too much. So insure it, just like you would a car, because you were talking about cars, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we have insurance for a reason. Accidents happen. Hopefully they won't, but you want to protect this stuff. It's good stuff. So
Don't be that
anyway,
person that puts a GoFundMe for your gear that
yeah,
got
yeah,
stolen and you're like, nobody told you not to insure your gear. You're walking around with, if my gear gets stolen or it gets broken and I don't have
mm,
insurance for it, guess what?
yeah,
I'm on the
yeah,
hook. I'm going back to
yes,
starting
yes,
from scratch. So,
yeah, yeah.
Chris, always great to have you on,
Okay,
man. I
so
look
good,
forward
man.
to chatting with you in the
High
near
five.
future. And to
Yeah,
all of our viewers out there, thank you guys always for tuning in. If you haven't yet, check us out on YouTube at B&H Event Space on there, where you can find this and all of our other recorded content free to you always. What we do here at the event space. But that is all we have for you today. Another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. Catch y'all next time.